Remember Saturday morning cartoons? Because some days I'm not sure I do, and other days I think that maybe that was the point. They were so formulaic and one note, and I don't know, probably still are, as for individual episodes to be functionally interchangeable. And it was great, right? These shows were made so that every time they came on, they were like an aesthetic pit lined with honey, filled with flavour and warmth for you to just get stuck into and feel comfortable. Your favourite characters had recognisable power-ups and dramatic moments that you knew and loved, and everything was wrapped up into a tight little package every single week. It meant that you could miss however many weeks and it wouldn't matter. Next time you'd just come back, settle in, and there they'd be. What you've missed isn't important. What's important is that you're here. Welcome back. It makes an interesting contrast to the kind of TV filling screens more recently, where it's a different thing every week and no single episode begins or ends anything, gradually nudging the plot along until the end of a season where it presumably concludes. Cold open montages remind you which plot threads will be coming up this week, establishing a barrier to entry that you have to at least pretend to overcome. Video games love nothing more than barriers to entry and have thus seized upon this format, with episodic games from studios like Telltale that do the same kind of thing, focusing on character developments and quote-unquote important choices that will make for great watercooler moments at the Tweet Factory tomorrow morning. These games are fine, but as more and more of them come out, I find the writing can wear a little thin. Though a lot of time and resources are spent presenting players with the feeling of meaningful decision-making, ultimately the realities of scripting, animation, and voice acting mean that these illusions remain just that. Fun stories to play along with, but maybe Clementine will remember this isn't the great narrative promise we once thought it would be. What if I were to tell you that video games were actively bad at telling this kind of story? At aping this kind of high-drama, fate-of-the-world stuff, where the lives of others and the shapes of entire communities hang on your every decision? Not that it stopped David Cage. Please, God, won't somebody stop David Cage? But most developers run into enormous practical issues when every player action has consequences, for which you have to write, animate, record, program, then cross-reference with every other possible choice to make sure nothing fatally undermines your narrative. In a world where the average player has come to expect high-quality animation and voice acting from their games, the budget required for these things limits your scope pretty quick, and in a lot of cases can become completely unsustainable. But what if a game didn't try for any of that stuff? What if it spent as many or more dollars per dialogue line on a far shorter script and spread it out more economically? What if instead of assuming you cared enough to remember every plot thread from every previous episode, it was more concerned with the colour of the wall than the pattern on the wallpaper? If The Walking Dead Season 2 is the video games of prestige TV, then what is the Saturday morning cartoons of video games? Galak-Z is a roguelike. What are we, like 3 for 4 now? From developer and publisher 17-Bit, released in late 2015. And from the start of episode 1, it presents itself as an affectionate callback to these cartoons, with its cheap and cheerful art style, melodramatic episode titles, and this fantastic VHS pause effect on the menu screen. It has a characteristic simple setup and sincere narrative, with sole-surviving fighter pilot ATAC, and much too smart for this science officer Beam, struggling across 4 seasons of 5 episodes each to cobble together the bits and pieces they need to make it out of the sector alive and warn the Earth about the evil empire of Baron of Space. Or something? It's not actually very important. And that makes sense, right? I don't need to know intimately where these characters see themselves in 10 years, because that's not what I'm here for. I'm here for little, joyful interactions between characters and the general feel of this desperate fight for justice in space, which the game sells perfectly. I know some of you out there are probably vibrating in your seats right now because we're almost 7 paragraphs into talking about the game, and I haven't told you what any of the buttons do yet. But it's my video, and you're here now, so we're going to talk about the voice acting first. It's just astonishing. How many games have you played where the development of a relationship between 2 characters is clear just from the way they intone each other's names? Over the course of this story, these 2 go from panicked, reluctant collaborators to enthusiastic, genuine friends, each of them finding their own way to this new relationship. That they can change and grow like this in such a small space speaks even more to the quality of the acting at play here, when you consider that the narrative doesn't really have much in the way of, events for them to respond to. Because it's a roguelike, it has to sustain you repeatedly dying and losing all your progress, rewinding the tape and starting again. The way this manifests itself is that you only ever get kicked back to the beginning of a season, but the events of each episode are different every time. Sometimes you'll be fetching scrap, sometimes you'll be disrupting communications, with a fixed season finale to wrap it all up. Keeping the intervening episode's plot light works really well, giving the acting plenty of room to breathe by not forcing it to retread the exact same very event-specific lines whenever you have a crack at it. Alright, you've waited long enough, let's talk about the mechanics. In Galak-Z, you will generally surmount obstacles and right wrongs by giving them the old 1-2, where 1 is a laser beam and 2 is 2 laser beams. The various nasties of the galaxy will be carving out patrol patterns around hollowed-out asteroids and space hulks, and you will be shooting them. In their objection to this, they will fly all about the darn place, and often they'll shoot back. Thus, the game begins. Though the game is viewed from a sort of top-down perspective, instead of one stick controlling your movement and another controlling your aim, you just point one way, with gun coming out the front end and go coming out the back end. Immediately, attention. You can only shoot forwards, but you can also only thrust forwards. Intriguing. To balance this out, your ship has a weighty, sticky momentum. That means even the smallest injection of thrust carries you off pretty much forever. You can't point at enemies and fly in any direction that you want, so why not set yourself going on a strafe and then turn in mid-air? Why not get a giant insect's attention and fly backwards, shooting at it while it tries to lunge at you? Painting a big stroke of thrust around the canvas of space and wheeling around to land a shot is ridiculously satisfying, and if you can get a grip on it, will regularly make you feel like the kind of pilot that not only survives until the end of the show, but also gets their name in the credits. The encounter design is super smart too. With the stakes so high, you're always looking to get the extra edge in combat, meaning that when you see a spiky wall or fire a shot into a pool of lava and see it splash out in delicious, lethal bubbles, you're immediately thinking of how best to lay a trap for your enemies, to tip the odds in your favour. On top of this, the three factions of the game are constantly at one another's throats and will convincingly fight, meaning that if you're sent to kill a giant insect, you can just glide past the frigates guarding the entrance and start a grand melee, only engaging when it suits you best to pick off the stragglers. For me, this is best exemplified by the way in which each mission ends. After you break, borrow, or realign whatever this week's object of interest is, you have to head to a warp beacon to exit the level, but the energy signature it gives off attracts attention, meaning that by the time you get there it's always being guarded by the thickest space toughs in the quadrant. At this point, all bets are off. All you have to do to be home free is park your butt on the beacon for long enough, but it's quite a long time, and suddenly the training wheels have caught fire and the handlebars are made of pasta. The utilitarian caves and corridors you've spent the mission flying through have context now. By conditioning you with simple spaces, the game gently encourages you not to get too attached to any one hazard, and the malleable asteroid belt scuffles around the beacon test this to its limit. Will you use a nearby rock to shroud your assault? Will you find some void pirates and tempt them into a brawl? Will you push your luck as far as it will go and keep your engines down so you can very gently slide onto the beacon and blink away before anyone knows what's happening? These moments are the kind of thing that will make you say to yourself, and believe, this is just crazy enough to work. Don't think I've forgotten this bar here either. There's always another option. Galak-Z is a game with missile barrages not unlike plagues of particularly explosive locusts. And if that sounds like fun to you and you care about spoilers, you should just go and buy it. Right now. Because to talk about this game anymore, I'm going to have to spoil something extremely cool that doesn't happen until the beginning of Season 2. But it has a profound effect on the way that the game is played. So go, shoo! You've got 3 seconds to pause this video and get to a safe distance. Are they gone? Okay, good. It's just you and me now. Because it gets even better. This fully featured space dogfight game has a completely different combat system lurking just beneath the surface. At the end of the first season, Atac finds a power source that lets his ship transform into an extremely anime sword robot at the touch of a button. The game immediately, triples in complexity, because there's essentially no cost at all to switching between the two. Meaning that you can let off a salvo of missiles, lock eyes with the enemy dreadnought and smash them into a nearby wall as you might an angry metal basketball, or you can use your powerful robot hands to carry an explosive canister, a live power core, or even a giant asteroid into combat, throwing it right in there before changing back into a ship and filling their world with lasers. It feels incredible. And hey, want to guarantee your game sells at least one copy? Put this sound in it. It's here with individually engaging but ultimately interchangeable encounters, compelling, affectionate acting, and a combat system like driving a laser pointer through treacle. The Galak-Z really comes together. It has it all. The characters you want to spend time with, something to focus on just for now, less a grand plan than a grand mood. Episodes begin and end interchangeably, becoming a haze of bombastic space action to get your blood running hot and your trigger finger twitching. And it's a good thing that the emotional structure of this game lends itself so well to this ending and beginning and ending loop, because it ends quite a lot. God, it's hard. It's really hard. It's probably too hard. That's got to be my biggest criticism of this game. In putting together this deep, fascinating combat puzzle where you have all these options that all do distinctive things and allow for an expressive approach to survival in the cold heck of space, it can be easy to just get overwhelmed, take a bad hit or two, and just die. God, fuck! And not just as a question of raw mental real estate either. When you're holding a button to guard, a button to charge your sword, a button to accelerate, and a button to boost, the latter of which has a meter to manage, by the way, you'll almost definitely get that thing where you finish yet another absurdly close encounter and just spin off into a wall or nearby spike bush. Because your hands are gripping so tight on the controller you've forgotten which finger is in which pie, like some kind of amnesiac baker. Oh, and for whatever mystifying reason you can't save mid-season, even to quit, meaning that if you want to get through a season you have to do it in one sitting, which is kind of a drag. Though, it looks like they added a checkpoint mode too, which, considering that less than 10% of the people who own the game have made it to the transforming mech, you know, the other half of the combat system, should maybe have shipped with the game? And it's a shame so few people could get far with it, because I think that what's there is really special. The parts of the roguelike genre that this game leans on the most, that emphasize enjoying the journey and the people you grow with along the way, rather than concerning yourself too much with how to get from a beginning to an end, and what revelations you'll have about the people you meet, seem to me like the best way to explore the emotional space of a Saturday morning cartoon. TV in which nothing really happens, that tries its absolute hardest to be the same every week. The roguelike thrives on this. It requires it. Week in and week out, you go through similar motions with slightly different events. You have your cool transformation sequences and mega missile hellstorms, characters that open up not just to each other, but to you as a viewer. What you remember and recount to your friends isn't the way in which your understanding of a web of characters, plots, and events was fundamentally changed by a reveal, but instead the tiny, agile way in which you exploded a gaggle of void punks, the time you made a bug chase a hammerhead into a lava field, melting them both. The plan that was just crazy enough to work. These are your episodes. These are your arcs. They are for and by you, and you will have forgotten almost all of them within an hour of playing. But the ones that stay with you are truly precious. Memories from your time spent in a uniquely welcoming and friendly place. A place where you can FUCK! Hello. If you liked this, you can gain immortality by clicking the like and subscribe buttons, permanently recording that fact for all of time. If you really liked it, have a conversation about it. If you're not a conversationalist, form a cult around it. If cults aren't your scene, get a tattoo of the URL on the sole of your foot. If your leg hands are covered in tattoos already, you can just go and yell about it from a nearby roof. Once you're done, here's some other videos that might interest you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.